All right, it's Thursday night programming, so let's throw something together for arrays and see what we can do. Maybe something to have a little fun. So let's process a couple arrays and see what we can do. I have a small program here that I'm keeping track of some basketball stats, points, rebounds, assists. Let's say this player, whoever it is 10 games in. They've racked up some points, rebounds, and assists throughout the 3 games, and I want to be able to figure a few things out. So I have these 3 lists, and I would like to be able to process them as best I can. I'd like to write some functions that can help me do that. A function that can tell me what the best stat was, so what was the highest value in any one of these lists. A list that can, or a function that can tell me what the average of the game spans were, and another function that might be able to tell me how many triple doubles I may have occurred throughout this 10 game span. So let's get into it and just start writing out some functions and see where it takes us. So best stat, basically what I mean by that is we're returning the maximum of the list. So we're trying to find out the highest value of whatever it is. So functions in Python are always going to start with the keyword def. Let's call it, we'll call it max stat. Okay, whatever you want to do, or find max, or whatever you want. But here I want to make sure that I can pass in a list. I don't want to make a function for all 3 things. I want to make a function that works for all 3 lists. So let's just pass in our stat list, whatever it may be called, or whatever we may pass in. Okay, it's of type list if you really want to shoot out what it is. Okay, and this is simply going to find and return the highest value in stat list. Okay, so that's essentially what this is going to do. So let's find a way to process it and see what we can do. The first thing that I'm going to do is get a ballpark for what might be the highest value. So I'm going to grab the very first value in the list. So I'm going to say maxed, we'll say highest, equals something like stat list at 0. We'll just assume that the first item is the highest, then we'll see if any of the others end up higher than that. We'll just keep substituting it for highest as we go. So let's loop through all of the items in stat list. So we'll go for stat in stat list, and we could say if my stat, whatever I currently am at, is greater than highest, okay, then I want to replace highest with that stat, whatever it may be. And when it's all said and done, let's return the highest. So now we've given out what the biggest value is. So let's go in here and let's see if we can play with it. So I've got my main method here that has the 3 lists. Let's see if we can print out what the highest score was in one of these pieces. So let's first come up with the high points equals something like max stat for points. And then I can easily print it. The highest point total was, and then we can do, actually let's make this a printf statement just to make this easier, and we'll throw out high points. Alright, and let's run it and see what happens. So we'll save it, run it, and we should see my list, and it says the highest point total was 30. If I get into my list all the way through, that makes sense. 30 is the highest point total out of everything, so it seems to work. What if I change this out, instead of high points, I did high rebounds? Just to make sure it works, and we change max stats from points to rebounds. And we'll change our print statement, obviously, to highest rebounds. And we'll put in high rebounds. And let's run it and see that it works with the other list as well, which it should. Oh, I spelled rebounds wrong. So let's get that spelled right. There we go. Give it a shot. And it says high rebounds is 15, and I think that is correct. Yes, it is. That is the highest value. So I'm going to assume if it works for points and rebounds, it's also going to work for assists. It would return the 11 there as well. So let's get into the average stats function. So an average, if you don't know, is simply the total of all the stats divided by the number of stats that you have. All right, so let's play with this average stats function. So let's write that, def average. We'll say get average. Right? It's always nice to have your functions as a verb-like as possible so they describe action. And we'll pass in a stat list again. Okay, this is going to return an average for the list, for us, the stat list. Ah, jeez. Okay, so an average, total of all the values divided by the number of values. So for me, I need a total variable. I'm going to set that equal to 0. I'm going to start it there. I will loop through all the values, so we'll use another for loop here for stat in stat list. Okay, and we are going to increase total by that stat that we get, so total plus equals stat. Okay, and once I have that, I can simply return, okay, the total divided by the number of items in the list, which is the length of the list. Right? And that'll return it for me. So now coming down here, let's take these out, okay, and we'll just kind of test this out. So here we want to get the average of points, so we'll say something like average equals, we'll say get average of my points, okay, and I can print that. Pass in and go like this, average, oops, we can save it, we can run it, and we should be able to see that we average 19.3 points. We could do the same thing with rebounds and assists, but as long as it works for one list, it should work for the other. Okay, so let's talk about this last function. This last one's kind of fun. We want to count how many triple doubles we maybe had, okay? So let's see if we can come up with that. We'll go def get triple doubles, okay? Triple doubles are just when we came up with 3 double-digit values in both points, rebounds, and assists, all at the same indices, so for the same game. Each index is its own game. So we're going to pass in 3 stat lists here. So we'll go in with points list, we'll go with our rebound list, and we're going to go with our assist list. The reason we're going to pass in 3 lists is because I need to get stats from all 3, so it makes sense to pass in all 3 of them. So we're going to return the number of triple doubles. Okay, so here I'm actually going to use a while loop here, and the reason I want to use a while loop here is because I want to be able to access all 3 lists at the exact same place each time. So I'm going to go with a counter, I'm going to call it game. Okay, I'm going to set it equal to 0 because each index represents a game. I'm going to say while my game is less than the length of any one of these lists, since they all should have the same number of games, we're going to say less than points list. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask myself if they're double digits. And essentially, in order to be double digits, it means I need to prove that it's greater than or equal to 10. Okay, each one of the lists. So if, okay, my value at points list at I, okay, is greater than or equal to 10, and, okay, my value at rebound list is greater than or equal to 10, and my value at assists list at I, and I forgot the at I here, so let's put that in real quick, or at game, what am I saying, game, not I, game is the index, at game is greater than or equal to 10, okay? If that happens to be true, then I know I got a triple-double, and my goal is to count how many triple-doubles I have. So I'm going to keep a counter for the number of triple doubles. I'll set that equal to 0. So all I want to do is, if this is true, if my points, rebounds, and assists at that game, those values are greater than 10, all three of them, then I want to increase counter by 1. Okay? And essentially I'm going to go through all that, but I need to make sure that I increase game by 1 as well to get to the next game so that I can see if it was a triple-double, and get to the next game to see if it was a triple-double, and so on and so forth. So this simply advances the game index so that I can check to see that I'm getting to the next game and scoring a possible triple-double through this condition. Okay? Once I've gone through the entire loop, okay, then I can finally return the counter that's keeping track of how many triple doubles we may have had. So let's get in here, let's test it out and see what happens. So let me back this up so we can see it a little clearer. And I'm going to just take this code out so it's a little bit easier to manage. And we're going to say triple doubles equals get triple double. Okay, and we have to pass in 3 lists. They don't have to be in the same order, just as long as they're the right list. So we'll pass in the points list, points. We'll pass in the rebounds, and we'll pass in the assists. Right? We'll print how many triple doubles I had. And let's see how many triple doubles we had. Save it and run it. And I know there's at least 1 in the list. And actually there were 2. Okay? I can see that there's a triple double here at this part in the list at index, what is it, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so the 5th game. And it looks like there's another triple double here at the 7th index, or the 7th game, I should say, at the 7th game. So we had 2 triple doubles in our 10-game series, right? So that's kind of neat. But there's different ways of going in and processing lists. Processing lists basically happens on a loop. You have to make sure that you go through the list in one of 2 ways, either with a for loop to go through each element as kind of a read-only, or to go through it as a while loop where you're keeping track of the individual index you're on, and you can use that index to access the information from the list itself. So a couple different ways of going about it, but once you have the information, you can process it any way that you wish. So just make sure that you use it and use it appropriately for the question. So hopefully that kind of helps you process the lists and get you going with any assignments you may have.